Cosine law is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times the cosine of a. You'll use the cosine law when you do not have a right angle triangle, and also when you do not know an angle and the side length across from it. If you did, you'd use the sine law. It's a lot easier and quicker. You use the cosine law if you're either looking for a side length or looking for an angle when you have these other pieces of information. For example, if you know one side, another side, and the angle between them, you can use the cosine law to find the third side. Also, if you know all three sides, you can use the cosine law to find any angle. Notice by looking at this, it's similar to the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem, we'd have a squared equals b squared plus c squared, where a is the hypotenuse. Now imagine if this triangle was stretched out that way, so this was 90 degrees, then a squared would be equal to b squared plus c squared. But we're subtracting 2bc cosine a to account for the fact that it's brought back in when that angle is not 90 degrees. Consider this triangle here. So let's say we have a side length of 12, and if that's 12, this is about 8, and an angle here of 44 degrees. Now we're looking for this side length here. I can't use SOHCAHTOA because I don't have 90 degrees, so I don't have an opposite, an adjacent, and a hypotenuse. I also cannot use the sine law because although I know sides and angles, I do not know an angle and the side length across from it. So I'm going to write down the cosine law. Cosine law is a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times the cosine of a. Now something to notice here, the side length by itself is across from the angle that you're taking the cosine of. And then the other two side lengths show up in both spots here. I'm going to then go ahead and just label that B and label that one C so that everything will fit into the formula, and this angle here is going to be A. Again, make sure that the angle A is across from side length A for all of this to work. I'm now going to put in the values. That's unknown. So if B is 8, I've got 8 squared here and I've got 8 here. C is 12, so I have 12 squared and I have 12 here. And angle A is 44, so I'm going to take the cosine of 44. Okay, so that's 64 plus 144 minus 192 times the cosine of 44. Now the cosine of 44 is 0.7194. So a squared is equal to 64 plus 144 minus 192 multiplied by 0.71934. So that makes A equal to the square root of 69.89. Which is 8.36. Now I'm going to have a look at my triangle to make sure that looks reasonable. Is it reasonable that this side length is 8.36? Absolutely. So to recap, to use the cosine law to find a side length, you will use this if you know two side lengths and the angle in between them. You'll write down a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times the cosine of a. Make sure when you do this, a is the unknown you're looking for and it's across from the angle that you know. If you knew this angle and a side length across from it, you'd want to use the sine law. Put all those numbers in, follow the order of operations, squaring them first, then adding them, multiplying first, finding the cosine and multiplying, then subtracting. And finally, realize that all this work gives you a squared. You must take the square root to find a. I'm now going to show you how to use the cosine law in a situation where you know three side lengths and you're looking for an angle. Okay, if this is the angle I'm looking for, the side length across from it is A, which will make this B and that C. Okay, now when I go and write everything in, this will be my unknown. I'll have numbers for everything else. So 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, 4.5 squared is 20.25. Two times 4.5 is 36. Now I've got to rearrange things. I'm going to subtract these first, and then I'm going to divide. As you can quickly see, everything's turning negative, but don't worry, the negatives are going to cancel each other out and you'll end up with a positive number. So I've got 9 minus 20.25 and further minus 16. So that gives us negative 27.25. That's equal to negative 36 times the cosine of A. I'm now going to divide both sides by negative 36. So that gives me the cosine of A is 0.7569. I'm now going to use my table and say if the cosine is 0.7569, my angle must be between 40 and 41. So I'm going to say my angle is about 40.5 degrees. Now you can use your calculator and do the inverse cosine of 0.7569 to get a more accurate answer. It's actually 40.8. So I got this estimate using a table and this more exact answer by using a calculator. To recap, if you know 3 side lengths of a triangle, you can use those side lengths to find any angle. Write down the cosine law, but realize that whatever side you use as A will be the side length across from the angle that you end up finding. Put in all of your numbers, and then apply your rules of algebra here to get all the numbers on this side. So after squaring these numbers, I subtracted these from both sides, bringing them to the left, found the difference after subtracting, and then divided out that negative 36 to get me the cosine of A. Once you found the cosine of your angle, use your table or your calculator to find the inverse cosine to find the angle that goes along with it.